And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another season of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Tennessee, the preseason, the exhibition, the games that don't count, but we are going to overreact to, as we do with Indiana fans. Indiana wins this exhibition outing at Tennessee, 66-62. Indiana had a kind of a rough start to the first half on the offensive end, only shooting around 33%, 0 for 11 from 3, which obviously is the hot topic on all social media, and we will talk about that a little bit as we get going. They added just 10 turnovers and 4 assists against a really good Tennessee defense, a defense that was top 5 last year and will probably again be at least in the top 10 this year with the great guard play that they have and they deal with. Turnovers, obviously, to start the season are not as big of an issue or concern as guys get together and figure things out. But IU took a deficit of 1 point, 25-26 going into the first half, but the second half was a much better IU team that we looked, scoring 41 points, averaging more around about a 52% shooting, 4 for 8 from 3, which is a lot better. Obviously, a little bit lower volume in the second half, a little bit smaller volume overall. But the positive thing is they did have 7 assists and just 3 turnovers in that half. So tale of two halves, as we often have said on this show, and you've heard us talk about as well. But a good outing and what you would hope for from a exhibition game. Thank you for being here with us. I see a few of the regulars here in the chat with us, and thank you for those that are listening in the podcast afterwards. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Here with me always is Martha, the mop lady. Martha, give me your opening thoughts on this game.
Morning, Chad, and it's great to be back with you. I want to preface all this by letting you know it's very much still football season for me. But what a beautiful world we live in, where we are still invested into our football Hoosiers and basketball season starting simultaneously. So we'll take it. But it's exciting to be able to have both, and it's exciting that basketball's back. And quick takeaways are to your point. One, it's an exhibition game, so you consider all that, right? Try not to read too much into it, but it's also an opportunity at the 12th ranked team at the nation to kind of make a statement. And I thought it kind of went as expected, right? With all of the new faces, it's not going to be a work of art to start things off. It's probably going to be ugly, especially practicing against somebody that's not your own teammate. So, you kind of have to have that perspective going in. This is going to look a little bit muddy, especially, Trey's not back yet. And, there's a lot of new. So first half looked, I think, exactly that way, I think, but the guys battled. They played hard on defense. And then obviously I know we'll get into individual players, and there's certainly one that stuck out, but obviously starting off mucky and then going into the half and really, I think, kind of hitting a groove in the second half was the way I kind of hoped the game would go, right? I think being able to go to a place like Tennessee, team that's got a lot of experience, 12th in the country, tournament team from last year. And it's Rick Barnes basketball, right? They're perimeter oriented. They're going to try to muck you down. They're not known necessarily for their offensive, strength. So it kind of went as expected. And that's how you win at Tennessee. It's probably going to be ugly. You're going to have to lean on your defense a little bit and then make shots down the stretch. And that's exactly what Indiana did. So I left pretty happy and pretty excited about what's around the corner.
Yeah, and then as you said, it's kind of crept up on us. We're used to, as Indiana athletic fans, we're counting down to that first time that we can watch basketball and everything. And with football doing what it's doing, and we're going to have Scott from Crimson Cast is going to join us later on to talk a little bit of football. I would feel remiss if we didn't at least speak a little bit of football and what's going on. But because of what football is doing, this game did creep up on me and crept up probably on a lot of us, not realizing that I had this without the reminders probably on social media and everything. Usually we're counting down to those days, but brilliant job by the coaching staff and everyone or those that had a hand in planning this game. usually you see, and you will see from the follow-up, the next couple games that IU has, you're used to seeing the for those old school people, the athletes in action, and those types of teams come in, and it's really games that you kind of dominate on, and they're good games to have because as we will discuss as we move on in these other exhibition games, those help to create rhythm and work out through your plays and everything. But to play competition like this, to really be challenged, is great, is fantastic. And be it the first game here, if they had done it later, is just something that it is great to have. After these guys have all summer been just battling against each other, knowing each other's plays, to go against someone of this caliber, it's just going to reap benefits. It's going to allow us to get together a lot sooner. You spoke about, obviously, we'll get into individual players, and I think obviously the big standout and the one that I've been most excited for this postseason going into this year has been Miles Rice. He is just going to be something special for this team this year. Finished with 20 points, 4 assists, and no turnovers. He had a big basket kind of in the last 2 minutes, and then got into the paint and found Malik for that great kind of dump down pass. Just overall, just love his ability to get downhill, his speed, both on offense and on defense. He can control guys. There's times where he kind of dribbles around underneath the basket, and he's amongst the trees, and he knows that he can't get up a shot, but you saw him do circles almost around all the big guys underneath and then finds the right person. Just such a great kid, such a great head on his shoulders, and an exciting piece to have this year for this team. Your thoughts on Miles' game?
Well, it's the dynamic that I think IU's been lacking the last couple seasons, right? I think we've been, maybe we've had it in spurts with Xavier Johnson, but obviously he missed, so much time. So there wasn't that consistent piece at the guard position, but he just brings a different dimension to Indiana's offense. His ability to attack the basket, I think, obviously creates for himself, but also his teammates, right? You saw him make some key passes down the stretch. I remember one specifically to Malik Renew that really helped ice the game, but he pushes the pace, and I think that's what Indiana was kind of lacking at times last year, and his ability to get downhill and push the pace and do it effectively, I think makes all the difference, for Indiana. And just when you've got that guy now that I think when a play needs to be made, he's a guy on the perimeter you can go to with I think some faith, and he was just clutch down the stretch, and I think that just proves that point. So excited. We heard a lot about him. We got to kind of get our first look at him at Hoosier Hysteria, and you can see little glimpses there. But to be able to see it like at a place like Tennessee, where they're preseason top 15, so it's exciting. 7 of 14 shooting, 4 assists. So that's phenomenal from the guard. Just something we've really been lacking, and I'm excited once we get moving offensively. He's obviously going to be a big piece of that, and just to be able to add a guard like that is phenomenal. I think he was certainly my brightest point, him and Malik. So it's exciting to have that.
Yeah, and that's a great transition. We'll get into Malik next, but one last thing I do want to say about Miles is just, and this I mean no disrespect to past Hoosier point guards, but I haven't felt this way about a leader point guard for IU as far as what his ability is on both ends and just his mentality, his headspace, and his overall skills since Yogi, I think. I can't think of any other ones that would top. And again, that doesn't mean that everyone was bad since Yogi, but I'm just saying he brings that next level and that kind of confidence and that making ability that we had. That obviously some of the shooting and 3-point shooting wasn't quite there for him in this game, and it wasn't quite overall. We'll get to that later, but that'll come. But just the groundworks that we're seeing right now is just something to be excited about. You teased about Malik, and obviously he was the top scorer for IU, had just an amazing second half for IU when Indiana was down 54-50 with about 7 minutes left in the game. He scored 10 unanswered points, including that 3-point shot that he made. He seemed he had his big old grin after he made that basket. Was excited to see that. We'll see if that continues from him. I wouldn't be opposed to it. As I've said often in the past about some of our big guys, let's get out there and do that. That's going to be a very key thing if he can hit one or two of those every so often to help have him and Ballo in at the same time. But he did finish again, like I said, with a team high 21 points, 8 for 12 shooting and 8 rebounds. And his defense was good overall. I think occasionally he still gets a little lost on it. I think he gets a little ball watchy occasionally and loses his guy. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle for him being on the 4-man, but you've seen the improvements in his body in the offseason. You've seen his speed kind of getting up and everything like that. So I'm excited for him moving on. And he didn't foul out. Foul trouble wasn't an issue for him as well in this game. Your thoughts on Malik?
I think a lot like the game went, Malik went. I think there was a stretch he took over in the second half. In fact, I think he had a 10-0 run himself. And that's big. You look at how far he's come since his freshman year when he couldn't stay on the court. We talked at length about it last year, but he's obviously going to be a key piece on the front line this year. Just, with Ballo, I think, I don't think you're going to get a ton of points from him. I think he's more of a defensive guy that's got his length down there. So he's going to be our guy on the low block. And, I thought he did what he needed to do, right? I think down the stretch, that 10-0 run to me was impressive. And you knew who the dudes were down the stretch, right? Miles Rice, Malik Renew, those two guys took Indiana across the finish line. And it was impressive. And he's, again, go 8 for 12 just to be able to shoot that high percentage. I'm with you on the 3-point shots. I don't mind the occasional wide open look for him, but it's one of those things where it's that fine line, right? A couple go in, and all of a sudden you think you're a perimeter shooter. So, when it makes sense, right? So but he has the ability to step out and knock those down. And I was impressed. I thought he was efficient enough on the defensive end, but to your point, with the lineup that we put out there, he's going to be asked to guard at times longer, quicker guys. So it's going to be a key piece to what he's able to do this year. And I thought he did a pretty good job yesterday. Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned Ballo there a little bit. We'll talk about him now. He's going to be a bully in the paint this year for IU in all the best ways for us. I mean, his body, his size. Obviously, he doesn't quite have the speed of some of the bigs that we've had recently at IU. He has changed his body a little bit and gotten a little bit faster probably than he was last year at Arizona. But just his size and what he can be underneath, grabbing those rebounds like he did, finished with 11 rebounds, 3 for 8 from the field, played 32 minutes. I was kind of shocked by that. I think that's higher than I expected him to be playing. Only one that topped him in minutes was Malik at 33 above him. So I was a little bit shocked in how many minutes he got. I thought they'd spell him a little bit more than that, but never thought that he looked like he was tired out there or anything like that. But just, his overall size and ability and just to be there. And I think it was the second score that IU had was him just getting that great under the basket position. And IU found him for that great little dump down pass. So he's going to be a force for IU this year, and is going to be banging down there with a lot of the Big Ten bigs. It's going to be very interesting this year. Your thoughts on Ballo?
Yeah, I think it's and I obviously seeing him a little bit, during his time in Arizona, whether it was when Indiana was playing them or just catching one of their games. I think obviously the intangibles he brings are just exactly what we just mentioned, right? His ability on the defensive end, his length. I was impressed with how many minutes. I mean, a man of that size, right? You just think you're going to need, to come off the court a little bit more than he did, but to be able to play that many minutes, right? I think, the hope if you can get 10 points out of him, I think that's a good night. I think because he doesn't have the greatest hands, right? Yeah, I've seen some passes go through his hands or some rebounds slip through his hands. So, if you can get 10 points out of him on any given night, I think that's a win. But his value is going to be on the defensive end, especially once we get into the conference season. We know what the Big Ten season goes like, right? It's just a lot of banging, it's just a different type of basketball where a guy that has those intangibles is going to pay all the value. So just nice to have a guy of that size with that type of experience. So I think it's going to pay huge dividends as the season goes forward.
Yep. I think Malik had a great game for IU as well. 12 points, 5 for 11 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3. I expect that to obviously go up as he kind of finds his rhythm and everything. He is one of IU's better shot makers. Did get that tech. I never really kind of felt like there was an explanation for that. I'm guessing it was talking. That's the only thing I could really have understood. They were kind of bad about showing the replay on that one. So I don't know, weird coverage on that. But you can just see his improvements overall as a player this year. A lot better on defense, getting around and following his man, not ball watching like we kind of would have argued about last year, but had a moment also in this game where he showed where he can just be that guy for IU that can go one-on-one against his opponent and get a shot, get a basket when IU needs it, kind of thing. Get him in an isolation, get everyone off, shift it off to the other side, and let him just take his man on and get a shot. So I think he handled that well. He obviously in the starting lineup is playing more of the other team's 3 because of the starting lineup with Malik and Ballo in there, but did well as well, I thought, when he was put in there with Malik out or Ballo out playing at the 4, which is great to see as we maybe might talk about a little bit later. But just, excited for where he can continue to build his game. The Big Ten freshman of the year. What's your thoughts on Mackenzie's game?
Yeah, he sometimes gets lost in the shuffle for me. Just, I almost have to remind myself that he's at least thinking through the offseason leading up to the season, just thinking about the team and the pieces we've added, we've had coming back. And, he sometimes got lost in the equation for me a little bit. And, but obviously he's a massive piece just with the improvement he showed last year, his ability to score the basketball. Right. And if he can defend and rebound, I'd love to see him get more than 2 rebounds with that type of size. Right. But, if he can defend, he's going to score. He doesn't see a shot that he doesn't like. Right. He's got the ability to score the basketball. I mean, 5 for 11, you'd like to see that up a little bit. But, it's Tennessee who plays good defense and, it's an exhibition game. So he's going to be an important piece. I'll be the first to admit I don't love the 3 big lineup. I also don't hate it. I just hope we're fluid with it. I hope we don't live and die on that hill, depending on who we're playing. So, it is what it is for a game like the one we played. And obviously we're a little bit short on the bench, missing Trey Galloway and Bryson Tucker. So I get it, and I'm not going to read too much into it. So I hope we're a little bit fluid with it moving forward. It's a lot of size on the court to have at any given time. But I think it worked. I think it worked like it needed to yesterday, right? It's going to be a little bit muddy, and that was okay against a team like Tennessee. And Malik found his, ended up with 12 points and in 31 minutes. And I think he's even going to shoot better than what we saw. So if he can give it to us defensively and score double figures, I think that's a good night from Mackenzie. Yeah.
And I think that we'll see it moving forward. I think as you mentioned that big lineup, what made me not as concerned as I was going into it so far is that I haven't seen as much sitting of those 2 in the paint together. There's at least a lot of movement. There's a lot of times the bigs draw out and everything like that. So a lot more 1 in, 4 out kind of situation. So I feel better than I was going into it. Now, obviously, we'll have to build on this and what to see. We only have 1 game sample size currently right now. So a lot of our takes right now are conjecture and just something that will change as we go along. The last kind of thing, as you kind of mentioned a little bit, that we can forget about Mackenzie. I think Kanan Carlisle, had kind of one of those games that he did well, but he just kind of disappeared in this game. I think he struggled to find his shot. The ball didn't quite go in for him like he'd want to. Just 5 points, 2 for 7 from the field, 1 for 6 from a 3. He can make those a little bit better. I know it as we move along, but had good speed, took care of the ball, just 2 turnovers. So I don't know. It's weird for him. I don't think he had a bad game. I don't think he had a great game. I think there's going to be times where he is going to be he could be that lead scorer. He could be that factor for IU. And I think just in this one, he just had to do what he did. Any thoughts on his game?
Yeah, I think he nailed it, right? I think he was a little bit quiet and a little bit kind of a forgettable, not in a bad way, game for him. He just didn't stand out, and but again, I think the point is like just being able to have that type of depth on the perimeter is going to be advantageous for Indiana moving forward, and that type of experience. Obviously, he had a tremendous freshman year. So I'm excited about what it looks like moving forward. Yeah, he didn't have a great night shooting, 1 of 6 from 3 and 2 of 7 from the field, but that's probably the floor for him, right? I don't think you're going to see that a whole lot from him. So a little bit forgetful and nothing really stood out, but I think a guy that's going to provide a ton of value as we move forward. So not going to read too much into his performance in an exhibition. Look forward to seeing what he can do against the competition we have at home coming up.
Yeah. And then I think speaking overall, just in generalities with our bench players, Cups, Luke Goody, we saw get in there. Hatton got in there as well. I think Cups didn't score a basket, obviously, but he played some good D. He struggled a little bit because obviously their guard was just small and fast and just hard, the worst matchup for Gabe Cups that he can be. But Cups had a great facilitating kind of game. Got to the basket a couple times. There was one time where he got underneath and dished it out to Carlisle in the corner. He made a pass to, I think, someone else that was kind of on the corner of the arc, which eventually got to McKenzie and hit his first 3 of the game. So that kind of one more pass offense is great to see this team go together. And then Luke Goody, I think, struggled, obviously, 0 for 5 shooting, 0 for 3 from 3. He's kind of known as that knockdown guy, but I think he is going to be that hard hat guy for IU this year. He's going to be that glue guy that kind of gets in there and does things that you don't really see off on the stat sheet and everything for this team. And then Hatton, like I said, got in there and spelled, and I didn't feel a big drop off. I didn't feel, and no offense to Sparks, but I didn't feel that Sparks worry that we kind of had when we brought in our backup big. I thought he had good looks. That little duck under that he had looked pretty good as well. So I was excited to see what he had. Your kind of thoughts on the bench guys?
Poor Peyton Sparks, man. There was always that concern anytime he came on the court. I was a little bit worried as well, but I agree with you. I think that was, when we look at yesterday, I think the one, and again, you preface this with exhibition, missing 2 guys that I think would have played some valuable minutes in Trey Galloway and Bryson Tucker. So when you look at the bench production, or in this case, the lack thereof, and, I think the bench went 0 of 8 from the field overall with, the only points being scored were Gabe Cups' 2 points. Again, I'm going to go back to this is going to be the ceiling for this is going to be the floor for our bench. Luke Goody is going to be a guy I think that's going to be extremely hard to keep off the floor for a variety of reasons. Obviously his experience, his ability to score from the perimeter. He brings a lot of intangibles, and obviously having played in the Big Ten as much as he has, he's going to play a ton of minutes for us this year. I thought he was one of, if not the best player on the floor at Hoosier Hysteria, and take that for what it's worth. It's Hoosier Hysteria, but he had a two or three perimeter shots that he knocked down there, but he's just, I think he's going to be a guy that's, he's not going to go over 5 from the field very much. So again, not reading too much into what the bench did or didn't give us. Obviously you want to see them have more points than 2 free throws. And I think they will moving forward. The starters played a bunch of minutes. I think each one played over 30 minutes, which I think is also going to be a little bit rare and probably unnecessary for Indiana moving forward, especially once we get a little more health back. But yeah, I think, again, not going to read too much into it. Certainly had some opportunities, put up some shots, had some open looks. I think you'll see them knock them down moving forward. But I think for everybody, it's just knocking that collective rust off. And obviously coming off the bench, you have a little bit less time to do that than the starters. So I think you'll see a much better performance, when we get into to some early preseason games here.
Well, and you mentioned that as well. And there were still 3 guys that were out: Bryson Tucker, Ja'Kai Newton, and Trey Galloway. I mean, 2 of those pieces we know could be contributed. One of especially Trey Galloway, which in the game, as you watched it, he was playing coach. He was playing true captain for this team on the bench, talking And whenever you got a shot of him sitting on the bench, he was talking and very engaged in this game and everything. And Bryson Tucker is someone to be excited for. Like you kind of mentioned, Luke looking good during Hoosier hysteria. I think Bryson looked good as well. It's going to be an interesting kind of minute distribution in this team. And what excites me overall from this team is that factor. If one player is having a bad night, there's not a position that doesn't have another player that can be the next man up and step up and do a lot of things for this team. And that's another thing that you kind of saw in this game was lots of different lineups, lots of different combinations of guys. And that's what you want to see in these exhibition games. You're feeling out who your team is, who's going to gel, who's going to give you what they want. And we saw, again, a lot of the time this team goes smaller with Mackenzie or Luke covering that 4 position. Your just kind of thoughts on how minutes are going to distribute and just overall these combinations we got to see in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to, I think, just the hope, the desire. I think, again, not to start off in any way, shape, or form critical or I'm entering this season with some hope, and rightly so, right? We've added a lot of, I think, really, really good pieces. I think, if there's been one challenging aspect to some Mike Woodson led teams, it's just been the stubbornness to stick with things that maybe not always seem to be working, or that maybe, you look at a 3 big lineup that I mentioned, right? I think having the ability to be fluid with that and being able to not necessarily just go with the starting lineup because that's your starting lineup and that's how I do things, but just being able to play matchups more. And, I think you've got the lineup to be able to do that. And my hope is, and I think you'll see it, is just, being able to mix up the starting lineup when needed, as needed, or at least the ratio of minutes and how they're distributed based off who we're playing. I think we have that luxury this year when maybe in years past we haven't. So, you've got, obviously we haven't seen a lot of Bryson Tucker, right? So we don't know. Obviously he comes in as a very, very highly ranked freshman. So that being said, you think he's going to be able to come in and contribute. We know what Trey Galloway can do. Ja'Kai Newton's kind of a wild card too, but he's got you see him and he looks like an athlete. He looks like a man. So, the hope is he can come in and provide some minutes. And obviously we mentioned Luke and Hatton and Anthony Leal. So there's some depth there that we haven't had. So, it's going to be interesting to see how we use it once we're at full staff. My hope is that, just like I said, we're just fluid with it and we take advantage of the different lineups we can throw out there. So I think it's exciting. I look forward to seeing how the staff uses this lineup, but we certainly have pieces that we haven't had in years past.
Well, and I think what it allows this team to feel is a little bit of, and I knock on wood with this, but a little bit of injury proof. You feel like there is a backup guy for each position or something. Like in years past, when we have lost Xavier Johnson or other guys have been injured, that's really kind of led to a drop off for this team and really kind of where a season almost tanks to a degree. I don't feel like that's as big of an issue in this squad or this team moving forward. A few numbers we'll get to quickly. We've got someone sitting in the green room for us, ready to pop on and talk a little uncharacteristic football on this. But a few of the stats, obviously the biggest one that people want to talk about is that the 3-point shooting, going 0 for 11 in the first half. 4 for 19 overall. Obviously, the volume's getting up there higher. Going to be the big kind of argument in the fan base. Joel, as well, listening to this, is going to bicker about that as well. Joel, relax. I think the shooting will get better. We'll be fine. But I think that's something that's a little bit of a rust thing. I think there's guys that are proven shooters that missed in this game. Malik will hit one or try one every so often. Mackenzie's going to get a little bit warmer. Luke's going to get a little bit warmer. Carlisle's known to hit him a little bit better than he did. Obviously, he's not known big time of his 3-point shooting, but as well as Miles. Miles can shoot it better, so that's something I'm not worried about. Turnovers looked a little bit better. Obviously, cleaned that up in the second half. It's the exhibition games, and they're figuring each other out. I'm not concerned about those in this. Any kind of stats that go out to you and your kind of thoughts on the fan base and the 3-point shooting hyper-focused ability that we have. Oh, got you muted, Martha. Still muted. Did I lose you?
I'm back now. You were glitchy on my
Okay.
side for a second, so I'm not sure what you asked, but
just stats overall, your thoughts on that and the shooting and how the fan base likes to focus on our shooting from three.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a tale of two halves, right? I think at halftime, I watched it on delay, and I don't have the strength, the willpower to not look at the results before I watched it. So I kind of had an idea what was going to happen. So I think it skewed I assume if I was watching it in real time, I would have been at halftime. Like, oh gosh, here we go again. What gives? But I had the luxury of knowing kind of how it turned out. And I thought we shot the ball and looked a lot more confident in the second half. So again, I'm not going to read too much into it. I thought the stats kind of tell that same story. If you look at the first half stats, really, really bad. Obviously, we didn't shoot the ball well overall from three for the entire game, but it was certainly better in the second half. And I think you're going to see it improve. We've got much better shooters on this year's team. So I think, again, you just have to take into consideration this is an exhibition game at Tennessee. They play good defense. It's a tough place to play, a tough place to win. You're not always going to go there and in there and shoot lights out. So, if this is still an issue 3-4 games down the road when we're playing some lesser opponents, then maybe start to ask some questions. But right now, I think it is what it is. Let it breathe a little bit, and I think everything's going to be okay.
Yep. And to switch and keep it as positive as possible, for some rare IU football talk here on this program, we'll maybe get a few talks, a little dive into it as these seasons overlap as we go along here. So your Indiana Hoosiers, what an amazing time to be an IU sports fan, to be involved in IU and watching things, the ability to go and watch IU football play one day and then basketball play the next. I'm going to come up for the Michigan football game and then get to go see IU play in one of their exhibition games the next day. So what an amazing thing to be able to kind of cluster in for those of us that don't live close to IU anymore. A good weekend of great sports, but they're firing all cylinders. And to do that, we had to bring in someone that knows IU football well. And again, all censorship is off here, so you can say whatever you need to, Scott. And obviously, it's going to be positive notes here. But we've got Scott from Crimson Cast with us. Thought I needed to bring you on because you're your hetero host mate, if you will. Galen has been on a lot of podcasts this past couple weeks and everything. So I feel like I needed to level it out and get you a little bit more airtime, get those minutes equal. Thank you for being here. Your kind of thoughts and joy as they sit right now for IU football.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. First off, I feel like I should be Martha. I need a screenshot because this is early morning. I just got done with the bus stop. I'm wearing glasses. I'm a morning hot mess. And yeah, it's probably, you probably wanted Galen first, but he was too busy with all his other podcasts. So I get coming in second. And I wish I could have talked about the basketball game. I still have not watched it. It's been, we were in, for those who listen to Crimson Cast, I was on fall break. We got back Friday night at 1 a.m., turned around at 6:30, drove down to Bloomington to go to the game with my son, which was awesome. Came back, basically just fell asleep, and then woke up yesterday. And we also have Pacers tickets, so went to the Pacers opening game, which also kind of sucked. That's a different podcast. We'll save that. And it's funny. My wife texted me. She's like, "How do I watch the Pacers game?" I'm like, it's FanDuel Sports now. Like, I don't know. I have a code. Like, just later, it's like, well, how do I watch the IU game? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what service it's on. Peacock, NBC, I don't know. Try Big Ten. I don't even know what it was on. So I need to go back and watch it. But no, football. It's a great time. I mean, this is, to say we're in rarefied air is almost an understatement. We were talking about in our last podcast, if we win this weekend at Michigan State, we will be 9-0. There's only 2 other seasons Indiana football has won 9 games. There's only like 8 other seasons where Indiana has won 8 games. And some of those games, you go back and look, we were joking on the pod. It's like 1905 was one of the years we won 8 games. And one of those wins, I think, against the Indiana Alumni Association or something. So some of those seasons don't really count. It's not a stretch to say this is the best season of our lifetime. And maybe, one of the best seasons of all time. And we're still going. That's what's really cool about it, is there's still, blue skies ahead with this team. Chad, I'm happy you're coming down. Everybody should come down, even though, try and buy a ticket on StubHub. The games are sold out, but it is an unbelievable atmosphere. I was unfortunately not there for Nebraska because of the fall break. Was there for Washington. It was unlike anything I've ever seen at Memorial Stadium.
I mean, just watching from afar, watching on Twitter all of the videos, watching Galen tour around, Tonsoni going around smashing his beers and having a good old time in his Uncle Eddie hat, those kind of situations. Martha, you were sharing videos as well out there, seeing friends and family and everything like that. Martha, you've been to a couple games this year. Does it just keep building that atmosphere? What has been your thoughts as you've kind of seen just the fan base energized as we've gone along?
Well, first off, Scott, the beauty about being able to keep my camera off on a Monday morning is I haven't even put my pants on yet, so it's very beneficial. It is. I've been to the last 2. It was at Nebraska, and then obviously at the Washington game, and I can't stop talking about it. I really, quite honestly, I can't stop thinking about it. It's I've been going to IU football games for close to 30 years, and obviously there's been the occasional big game that maybe there was a fringe of hope or. And I started in the Cameron years, so I missed a lot of the Mallory excitement, and so I didn't get to experience a lot of that. I know we experienced some of that during his years, but it's been unlike anything I've ever seen. I'm a huge football fan, so this is something that I've equally been waiting for, but also didn't think would ever happen, or wasn't sure would ever happen at Indiana, and so to be able to live it has been. I mean, you just leave there with so much pride, so much. It's quite honestly, it can get a little emotional. See, Scott's crying right now. But it honestly, I'm speechless because it's hard to put into words. I took Nick, who's in the chat. He went to the game with me on Saturday, and I think it was his first football game. So this is going to be all he knows. His bar is set pretty high, but
they're not all
just the hearing the excitement he left with was awesome. But it's just it's so cool, right? Because everybody's coming together. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. It's with what we've kind of been through with basketball the last couple of years, where there's been just a lot of it's just a lot of, I don't know, misery is not the right word, but certainly a lot of complaining is how the season's gone. Just to be able to have this type of pride in what IU athletics and IU football is doing, it's been a ton of fun. And just to see that place full, it's everything a college football fan can hope that their school goes through. So it's been exciting.
Well, and the thing that
I may have to jump off. I got to get my kid to school. So if I do disappear, it's on my end.
No worries. Thanks, Martha.
The thing I've been thinking about too is just, we've talked about this a lot, is how competent this team is. And it's just so many years that the IU football teams they have, moments and they have little glimmers, but they have all of these mistakes and they have crisis of confidence. This team has none of that. And I think for those of us like Martha, Chad, myself, Galen, who've been football fans for years of IU, you have all of that history that you come into the game with, and you're like, all right, when's the other shoe going to drop? When are we going to make the mistake? When's it going to hit? And, this team is just different. And, I heard something. Signetti was on the game day set. By the way, take a minute. Like, our coach was on the game day set. That actually happened. This wasn't, my joke is always a fever dream. It wasn't a fever dream. one of my friends is like, dude, he's like the white Dion, like, because he comes out, he's so brash. But he said one of the questions they asked, how do you turn around Indiana? Like, how do you deal with a program that's had this? Like, what? And Cignetti's answer was like, well, when I got here, the team that was here isn't here anymore. Like, they're playing somewhere else. And I thought about it, but it's true. And obviously some players like, Jackson and some other people have stayed around, but a lot of the players that were of the old generation are just gone. And we brought in new players that they keep on talking about the new culture. And I do think that, Cignetti has been able to do something that is unbelievably hard to do, just completely culture change in 1 year and kind of get rid of all those demons. And I start to feel like a lot of those issues that we have as fans, when's the shoe going to drop? When are we going to make the mistake? When is the other team going to just, realize like, oh, we're better. We're Nebraska. We're a better team. We're going to kick your ass now. I don't think it happens. And I don't think this team is built like that. And so I would say to all those IU fans who are a little nervous, just give into it. Are they going to go undefeated? No. Are they going to lose a game at some point? Probably. Are they going to make, break your heart? Like, maybe. But this team is different. They're not going to do it in, multiple ways throughout the year. And they'll do it like other teams do, where teams lose games. They lose games competently. And it's just something that's so unusual at Indiana. But I think we need to come to the realization this team is just different, and Cignetti really has caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, it's like Martha said, you've said, it's those stories of those tried and true fans that have stuck with it forever. I mean, my father was one of those as well. Our families had season tickets before when we lived in Bloomington. When my dad retired, he was a professor at IU. During his retirement, they gave him a football jersey with his name on the back. It wasn't a basketball jersey. I mean, that right there shows you his heart has always been with the football team as well. And so it's been great for him to see this team do what it was. And I can remember even too, I mean, everyone will tell these stories as well. I remember going to those games in middle school. I didn't watch the game. I was off playing football in the grassy field or sliding down the field on cardboard. Yeah. So everyone has those types of stories, but like you said, this is something different. And right now they are facing the adversity with obviously having Rourke out. I think Tavian did pretty well. He struggled a little bit more than we expected because we saw that second half against Nebraska, how well he handled things there. I don't think the last game was as good as he was in the second half, but they figured out what to do. They game planned, and I have the confidence in the coaching staff to be able to modify things going on. Obviously, we've heard that Rourke may be back pretty soon. What have you heard so far, and what are your thoughts moving forward with Davis or Rourke coming back, that kind of whole situation? I know you just recently did a pod, so this might be rehashing some of that talk, but
yeah, I mean, we joke that, there's a million doctors that all seem to know everybody at the game on Saturday, that everybody knew the doctor that deal with Rourke's thumb. It sounds like he might be coming back for the game against Michigan State. I think we'll just have to wait and see, but it does sound like that's a very, real possibility. It does, I think for Rourke, it's probably going to be just, you got to play through the pain, unfortunately, because if it's not a broken thumb and it's just a thumb, injury, there's not much they can do. They can't numb it. You have to play with it the way it is, which sucks. What I saw with Jackson is I think you saw the difference in the way that Rourke is able to read the defense and read those RPOs. And so that Indiana runs a lot of RPOs, and, but I don't know this, but my feeling was that Jackson was just taking the run 90% of the time and not even looking to pass, or just assuming like, I don't like what I see. I don't want to make an interception. I'm just going to, take the run option. Whereas I think probably 20 to 30% of those that were runs against Washington might've been throws for Rourke, where he sees something, pulls it back, and is comfortable to throw the ball. And you saw it sometimes, like they just put Jackson out there, like no back. It's like, all right, man, you got to throw. Like, we can't run the entire game, but the funny thing is, Chad, we still won by 14. Like you still won 31-17. You still basically throttled Washington to a point where the fourth quarter was not in doubt. There wasn't a question about it. And this is your backup quarterback. Going into Michigan State is going to be different. I think it's going to be the toughest road environment they've played in. I was at the Rose Bowl. There was a lot of UCLA fans there. It wasn't exactly a raucous environment. It was kind of antiseptic, and Indiana kind of took the soul away from UCLA middle of that game. Northwestern was closer, but Northwestern was also like 9,000 fans, of which a lot were IU. this is going to be a different story. It's probably going to be a cold game. Michigan State, their fans are going to bring it for them. This is also a point too where now we're a real scalp to be gotten. We joke on our podcast. It's like everyone looks at it from a different angle. Like we suck and we've played nobody, but if somebody beats us, you're like, oh my God, we beat the 13th team ranked in the country. It's like, listen, this matters. I think the team is better with Rourke. No question. I think he has better reads. I don't think it's helpless with Taven Jackson. I just think that the ceiling is a little bit lower, and you're playing with a little more fire and you're keeping the team a little bit closer. Had IU not gotten those 2 interceptions, one for a pick 6, that Washington game would have been really tight. And then suddenly, the offense wasn't what pulled away. It was the defense that kept the distance for us, and the offense did what it needed to do when it had to be done. So I mean, that was kind of a long way of saying I don't know. And my concern is less can Rourke play, but more how good is Rourke going to be? Is he going to be able to put the zip on the ball? Is he going to be able to hold the ball? How comfortable is he going to be? We're just going to have to wait and see. It sucks that it had to happen right here at kind of the meat part of the season where we could show nationally some people to kind of shove it in their face that if we could beat Michigan State, we could beat Michigan, we could go in and have a good showing against Ohio State. It'd kind of be nice to shove it in some of these people's faces who've been saying, this is just a complete flash in the pan. Because I think, if Rourke is 100% healthy and you have that first half Indiana team before his thumb injury at Nebraska, I was really starting to think there's a real world where maybe we could beat Ohio State. And I know that's insane, but I'm not sure. You look at Ohio State outside of it being in Columbus, I'm not sure what they've done to say they're a better team than us outside of being really close to Oregon. Everything else, you look at their schedule, it looks exactly the same as ours.
They struggled against Nebraska.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to go apples and oranges and everything with that. And like you said, it was the defense that helped. Obviously, Pons, I don't think I've ever seen an interception like his pick 6 interception. Someone to step into a screen like that. He was out there covering his man, and then saw that, and to be able to step into that little window and find that, it is just amazing. I live down here in North Carolina in real SEC and really kind of deep into it. And there's been so many people that have gone up to me when I'm wearing my IU gear, like, well, they've got a team. Who is this team and everything like that. And I think obviously the tough thing to deal with now as IU and not have too much resentment is how they're trying to rate this team. And these new ratings that came out and everything, because there is that IU name tarnished. And obviously there is that bias that is going into some of this rankings, because as you will see, lots of people say if the name or initials were different on the helmet, the rankings would be different. And with the same resume and everything. And I agree, that would be, and that's something we have to fight through. And that's a stain that we're going to have.
It is what it is. And it just kind of, you have to put it in that category. I mean, what sucks with the AP voting, Galen put this out on the Crimson Cast thread. You can look at the entire AP voting. It's really the people who are still voting us, 21st, 22nd, 20. There's some really low votes out there that just don't make a lot of sense. This is all awesome. I don't think we're one of the top 5 teams in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think we stack up against Georgia or, even though we're ranked above Alabama, I wouldn't really want to play them, or, Texas. There is a realistic point here where I think there's 4 or 5 teams, Oregon, another one, that are top of the class, but I think everyone else was a big mix. And I think that we are definitely in that mix and probably near the top of that mix. So the idea that somebody could look at all of this and say, I think Indiana is the 24th best team in the country, to me, that's a little bit unfair. But it is what it is. And the thing is, it's all laid out in front of us. If we win every game but Ohio State, we're 11-1. We should be in the college football playoff. What we've talked about this a little bit on our show, and it's wild because this is not something. It's like, hey, Galen and I, we don't like plan out our entire season of shows. That we never be like, hey, let's spend some time mid-season to talk about the college football playoff and the games, like how this all fits in. Never thought we'd be talking about this, but there is a world where we have to look at, if Indiana goes 11-1, and let's say they make the Big Ten championship, but then they lose to Oregon. I do worry at that point if that gets them kicked out of the college football playoff, Whereas any other team, if that was like if the same thing happened to Penn State, if Penn State's 11-1, but they lose in the Big Ten championship, they're going to the college football playoff. I think the way that things are set up now, where you but you play the championship game, I could see a world where that gets Indiana invalidated out, which would suck. But the flip side of the coin is this, the goal of this season was never college football playoff when we started. Galen and I both picked 8-4 as our record. We were kind of scoffed at. We're there. And the point that I made on our podcast last week is like right now, as it stands right now, even if we lose out, which is very unlikely, but just right now, we are probably going to go to the best bowl Indiana has ever been to since the Rose Bowl in '67. Like hard stop. If we don't make the college football playoff, like that's going to be a slight, like minuscule bummer based on where we think we could be. But if we go 11-1, 10-2, we're going to whatever. And I've not even looked, like we were looking at like Detroit bowls or like the music. I don't know what the next tier bowl is that's not in the playoff, but that's what we're going to be looking to going to. And that is an insane thing to think about. And again, that's where, as IU fans, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves and be unhappy with things that happen from here on out. If we get screwed out of the college football playoff, it's going to suck, but we're still going to play in a pretty awesome bowl. When to me this year was like, if we could just get to 6 wins and get to, Detroit, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a great point you say with the not making the playoff, because Indiana as a brand is always enticing for promoters and all that kind of stuff, especially with the steam, the head of steam that they have right now. All the press and the noon kickoff and the college game day and all the clips you'll see of Pat McAfee on social media and Coach Signetti lighting it up and everything like that. So yeah, the big bowls are going to be courting for IU should we not make it into those playoffs. And if we do, I'm actually truly really excited. I know this is a kind of possibly morbid thing to look for, but I'm excited to watch this team and this coaching staff in the trenches down in a game and struggling to come back, and what they're going to come up with, what this Shanahan offense can come up with to get things back. And hopefully, obviously, that's with Rourke. We'll see as things go. And like we stated before, with Rourke still being out, I liked seeing in this past game how engaged he stayed. It's kind of to kind of bridge the gaps, similarity between this basketball game and the football game. Trey Galloway was out, obviously, a big leader, a big piece of this team, but yet he stayed engaged. He was there kind of coaching the team as we went along. And you saw that out of Rourke, had the earpiece in, was listening to all the calls and everything, was grabbing Tavian and talking to him in between plays. So, I don't know where else to go with that with football other than say it's exciting and everything moving forward. I will shift a little bit back, and I am going to put you on the spot a little bit about basketball. Obviously, this is not going to be anything that you have to say with the exhibition game, but coming up, IU's next exhibition game is this Friday at 7 p.m. against Marion. That is on BTN Plus, so fire up that subscription if you don't have it. I've kept it because I've enjoyed watching a lot of the volleyball games and stuff, but you will need that BTN Plus for that game and probably a lot of the exhibitions going forward. But looking at things as these exhibitions continue, what are the things that you look for when you're watching these exhibition games out of an Indiana basketball team? What are things that you find? Are you able to sit back and pine away some of the shooting? What kind of things are you excited to see out of this basketball team?
I just want to see the players. I mean, just see the guys. Like I remember seeing Ballo when I went to the game in Vegas against Arizona. So I want to see him in I saw a couple of clips of him having some pretty monster dunks last night. I know I'm a bad IU fan. I've not watched the Indiana Tennessee. I will get around to it. I'm excited to see Rice and see what he looks like. I did a couple of preseason pods with Alex Bozich on Inside the Hall. We talked about this. I'm kind of less interested in focusing on 3-pointers because I just don't think we're going to shoot a lot of threes. I want to see if we're going to be efficient in the other areas that we need to be in to win games. So are we going to be good in our 2-point efficiency? Are we going to run an offense where we're getting people good shots? Are we hitting our free throws? Are we getting offensive and defensive rebounds? Because those are all the things that you're going to have to do if you're not going to shoot a volume number of threes. And unfortunately, in years past, we haven't done those. I look at every offseason, I kind of joked that this is a weird comparison, but it's kind of like where we're at with Russell Westbrook in the NBA, that he was a great player, but now he's had 5 different teams where every team's like, oh no, Westbrook's going to be awesome for us. We can figure out how to fit him in. And it's like, oh no, he's still Russell Westbrook. Like, he's great, but like, he doesn't give you what you need now. It's like, he's been on the Clippers, been on the Lakers, been on the Rockets. Like, he's just bounced around. Now the Nuggets are like, oh no, we got to figure it out. Every off season, it feels like we're like, oh no, this is the year without Trace Jackson Davis. Now Woodson's going to put in the offense that he wants when we shoot a ton of threes. Didn't happen. So it's like, oh no. Now without Ware, it's like, stop. Like, he's not going to shoot a lot of threes. He's a 64-year-old coach who isn't going to change has shown he's not going to change his ways. To me, it's like, let's stop talking about that. That's not bad. Maybe we increase a little bit of threes. How do we win? Teams that don't shoot threes just have to do those other things really well. And so that's what I'm looking for is, how are they doing it? And then, just is the team look kind of happy, fun, and engaged? That's something that quietly hasn't been talked about a lot, that some of those IU teams over the last couple of years haven't looked like they're having fun out there at times. Xavier Johnson brought a lot of energy, but he also brought a lot of, focus on there. And sometimes he would get pissed and the team looked a little cranky. Like, I want to see a team that's having fun and looks a little bit loose and doesn't look as tight. So those are the things I'd be looking for, but I also, it's really hard to see a lot of that in some of these games, and that's something I'll kind of segue into something else if you don't mind. That concerns me with the way this schedule is set up is you don't have a lot of tests in this season. You have South Carolina, which is like, okay, top 60 Ken Pom, that's fine, it's at home, but you're putting all of your eggs in the Atlantis bucket, which could be great, but we've brought this up a little bit, that the concerning thing is, if the first game is against Louisville in that tournament, you should win that game, but you kind of have to win that game, because if you get in the losers bracket in Atlantis, you're kind of not playing. First off, you have a loss to Louisville, and then you're not playing anybody. Like, I don't know how the bracket's going to stack up, but you could be playing like Belmont. You could play like the garbage teams that are in that tournament. You're in that tournament so you can play. I think Gonzaga's in there. Like, you're playing. You want to play the names because you need those. Because if you don't get them there, you're not getting them anywhere else. And then you're in the exact same position we were last year, where you're fighting all of the metrics the entire Big Ten season.
Yeah. That's a great point. Obviously, in a lot of your discussion, though, ahead of time, when you were saying stuff you were looking for, being someone that, and a lot of the viewers probably that have seen the games, there's some check marks there on some of the stuff you said. Maybe not full check marks. Maybe it's just the line down, and I'm waiting to move it up the other side. But yeah, things look in a way that have me at least excited. And I do share that same apprehension for the way this schedule is. It is always a bummer when you have these comfortable exhibition games that don't count. And obviously Tennessee, it doesn't count on the record. It might be something down the road if they're teetering between us and another school. They may look back, well, they played Tennessee and did this. But it's at least not a mark on the record. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward how this team can get together, how things can go moving forward. And we have that to concern us, but we have football to make us excited. So I think I'm going to leave you, let you have some last minute thoughts either about football or basketball. Just give me a closing thought to end on.
No, I think we are in – I hesitate to say this because I feel like I said it 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, that we're like, we could be running into a golden age of IU athletics. And I think that was before the 2021 football season. And then it completely kicked me right in the balls and it was not there. But it does feel that we have turned a corner, with football. Cignetti just has competence, and it doesn't feel like, it feels like lightning in a bottle right now. It doesn't feel like this is a flash in the pan. This feels replicatable, especially considering you have this next man up mentality where you have, a core of running backs who can do things. You have a core of wide receivers. It's not just one player. We won a game with our backup quarterback, that, a Big Ten game against a real live opponent, and we won by 2 touchdowns. That's something real. So I think this is going to be a very interesting stretch for IU football the next couple of months, because we're going to do some things we haven't seen before, and it's going to be really fun. And then with basketball, I think we're also in a very positive time, because while I think a lot of us have concern, I'll speak for myself. I have concerns with, the systems that Woodson runs, and, are they going to be clean enough, efficient enough, run a style of offense and defense that's going to really be competitive. I worry about those things. But on the flip side, Woodson has shown, probably better than any coach in the country, how to utilize the current system of transfers and NIL to bolster the talent on the team. This is the most talented team he has had. He has won off seasons, in my mind, back-to-back years with A and A+. So he's getting all of the talent that we need to get there. Now it's just a matter of, can we get there? But, on a positive note, he has that talent. We have all of that talent, and, we went to Tennessee. We won that game. It's an exhibition, but it's still at Tennessee. It's a live opponent. That's a game that Michigan State couldn't win last year. They didn't have a great season, so that, but Tennessee's a really good team. It's a road game. I'm really happy they did that. So I think we're hitting a point that could be a really fun year for Indiana, because I think football is going to have some really cool highs, and that's going to take you into, December, January, and then you're going to pick right up. I mean, you'll be watching basketball along the way, but then you're going to pick right up with a basketball team that should be competing at least for the upper echelons of the Big Ten, which is going to be nice. And then, should be in the tournament, because I think it's fair to say that this team isn't in the tournament. We've got real problems, but I don't think that's going to happen. So you're looking at a football team that's going to be competing for Big Ten title and a college football playoff. I'm scared to say it and get hit by lightning. And then you're going to go right into a basketball team that should be competing for a Big Ten title and, a protected seed in the tournament. That's great. That hasn't happened since, Mallory and Knight.
Yeah. So exciting. Soccer's finally getting its act together a little bit. They struggled a little bit. Volleyball continues to go on the up. It's just such an exciting time for IU sports overall. So guys, thank you. Thank you, Scott, for joining me. Thank you to Martha, who was on earlier and everything. That's going to do it for this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thanks for being there with us. Those of you watching on YouTube, those of us back and everything. Megan, I see you guys. Bison, you're in there. Nick, and everyone. Jen, thank you for being with us, watching us. Those of you listening on podcast, thanks for you guys as well. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. We enjoy having you here with us. We'll be back again the morning after the next show to be with you and to talk about it, suffer through it as we go through these fantastic athletic times as Indiana Hoosiers. Until then, go out there, have yourselves a wonderful day.
As always, go Hoosiers.